I'm like, dude, I am just programming Lewis Cole right here. This is all I'm doing. Let me just call Lewis and send him this track and have him play on it. So I texted Lewis. I was like, hey, I got this song for my record. I'm basically sitting here typing you in on my MIDI keyboard. Like, will you just do this? Will you play on this? He's like, yes, absolutely. I love it. And he just came in and destroyed it.
So to kick off season 6, we invited world-renowned guitarist Cory Wong to the show. As a prominent member of the band Wolfpack and a solo musician, Wong has left an incredible mark on the contemporary music scene, blending funk, jazz, and rock with his signature rhythmic precision. But in this interview, you'll hear how his newest project expanded him creatively and stylistically, not only as a player, but as a performer and a songwriter moving forward. Cory gives us a track-by-track breakdown of his 2023 record, The Lucky One, detailing the key collaborators who made it possible. He emphasizes the importance of having a strong network of collaborators to tap into, and he talks about why trusting them to utilize their strengths in order to create something you're all happy with is the real secret to evolving as a musician. You'll hear how he got connected with legendary musicians like R&B singer-songwriter Alan Stone, world-renowned drummer Aaron Sterling, and even had English YouTube star Dodie contribute to the record. We explore his unique approach to composition and talk about how his role as a guitar player shifted on this record from previous releases. And it's all coming up right now. So let's say you've just finished the latest round of mix revisions, or the last few tracks on a production you've been working on, but you want instant feedback before you go and ship them out. That's where Audio Mover steps in. Their revolutionary technology allows you to stream high-quality audio in real time, making remote collaboration a breeze. And with Audio Mover's Listen To plugin, there's no need for complicated setups or endless file sharing. Simply stream your audio directly from your favorite DAW to anyone, anywhere in the world in real time. And now with their newest plugin, they've made it possible to apply binaural rendering to Dolby Atmos mixes, allowing you to monitor how the spatial audio will sound on Apple Music. Through innovations like this, Audio Movers is leading a revolution in web-based audio transmission and reimagining the way musicians, podcasters, and educators engage with the world around them. So check them out at audiomovers.com and start your free trial today. One of the toughest hurdles for musicians and producers to overcome is recognizing when it's time to let your music go. So stop letting your music sit there on a hard drive waiting for the perfect label scenario to show up. Let DistroKid help you start reaching the fans you deserve right now. There's a reason why DistroKid is the go-to platform for independent musicians across all genres, and it's because they offer seamless and affordable solutions to distribute your music worldwide. Get your tracks on all the most popular streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so many more in just a few steps. Time is often money, and DistroKid understands that. So they've eliminated long wait times for processing your music in the system. And in fact, they can get your music live in as little as 24 to 48 hours now. The simplicity of the platform and features like automatic revenue splits and YouTube content IDs make distributing your music and collecting payments incredibly simple. DistroKid does not take a percentage of your royalties, and for one low annual fee, you keep 100% of what you own. It's straightforward, transparent, and affordable. So follow the link in our show notes to get 30% off your new DistroKid membership and start letting your music work for you. If you're a solo musician, a singer, a songwriter, or part of a band, you know that the journey does not end once you have that finished master in hand. Building a lasting career around your music requires a lot of additional activities to do things like develop, promote, and ultimately monetize your creative vision. And for those of us that aren't quite doing Taylor Swift level numbers yet, it helps to have a merchandising partner that can meet you where you're at right now. And SmartPunk MFG is a perfect solution for any and all merch manufacturing needs your band might have. From the first note to the final stitch, they have it all covered with whatever you might need. They do screen printing, they do embroidery, stickers, vinyl and CD production, posters, and pretty much everything else under the sun. They are an incredibly comprehensive online merch solution offering reasonable prices and feasible quantities for bands of all sizes. So go check out some samples of what they can do at smartpunkmfg.com. And when you're ready, just shoot them an email at info@smartpunkmfg.com and mention the record process to get 10% off your first order. So remember, that's Smart Punk MFG, and it's where creativity meets manufacturing excellence. Cory Wong, welcome to the record process. We really appreciate you making the time. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for, putting up with my nice backdrop here. I'm in this little apartment that they put me up in for this festival I'm playing at, like in the middle of the woods or something. So,
oh, lovely. I just did a festival in the middle of the woods. Which woods are you playing at?
Somewhere in West Virginia.
Okay, different woods. Mine were somewhere in like the middle of the UK. But
cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
Well, that's lovely. Well, listen, then we will not delay because time is of the essence, and those trees and the people beneath amidst them are waiting. But we have asked you here to talk us through the making of your new record, The Lucky One.
Yes.
And by the time people are hearing this, it will be out. People will have been digesting it, but we find ourselves at a really cool point where I have only just gotten a small sneak peek at it. And so I actually have a lot of questions just as a listener, as a fan. And we thought maybe it might be interesting to have you walk us through the record track by track and explain how each one came through. Before we do that, give our listeners just a quick Cliff Notes version of who you are and stylistically, like kind of what you've done and where your career has brought you to this point with this album.
Yeah, I mean, I started out playing as a sideman for other musicians and doing some of my own music just as a creative outlet for fun, kind of as a hobby. Not a hobby. I mean, but at the same time, I guess as I say that, realistically growing up, like I was producing my own records from the time I was in 8th grade. Like I got this little recording device and making records through high school and college, but just kind of not with any global mindset behind it, just kind of my own personal ambition or whatever. And eventually started playing with more artists and doing more touring and recording on albums, and some big artists, some local artists that are friends of mine, blah, blah, blah.
You can name drop. That's okay. We'll pick them right up because people should know that you've been in good company. You've played with some really talented people.
Yes. People from Ben Rector, Gene Simmons, Blake Shelton.
Yeah, I'll save it. People should definitely go check the link in the bio and whatever, even just like a quick glance at the Wikipedia, because it's really cool and it's really interesting because I think it adds a lot of color to the way you are and the way you create as a player. So it's really interesting. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of that. And then some of my friends were starting this band called Wolfpack. And then I got absorbed into that band and started doing a lot of that. And while that happened, I sort of kind of like was finding and identifying and exploring my own sound on the instrument and in music, started really crafting a sound and a thing, a vision, which was wonderful, amazing. One of it's like the greatest feat that we can have as an artist is to find a signature sound. So around that time was when that was happening. And then I started putting out some of my own records and actually like going for it, playing a few shows here and there, doing some small tours. And then Wolfpack we started this side project called the Fearless Flyers, which is more just like instrumental funk sort of thing. And I started making a lot more of my own records, doing my own tours. And then that all started to really grow and become something that's nice and wonderful. And I'm continuing to make new records. And I've been enjoying this creative space that I've been in for the last few years, and it's culminated into this record called The Lucky One. And one of the things that I really love about making albums as Cory Wong is the collaborative aspect, because so much of what I do really lends itself to collaboration. I'm a consummate rhythm section guy. I play plenty of lead, and I do a lot more lead on this album than I've done in most other albums, because the guitar magazines were like, give us something, man. Like the guitar fans were like, we know you could do it, just do it. I'm like, all right, I'll give it to you. So, I put some guitar fireworks on this record, which, I felt like it was appropriate. It's like, okay, yeah. It does feel appropriate. Let me find a way to express that in a way that I feel is honest and not just look what I can do. Because a lot of guitar albums, I don't love a lot of guitar albums because they're many times just like a way for guitar players to show, hey, look what I can do on my instrument, rather than, hey, here's this art that I'm trying to express. Hey, here's this vision that I have. Here's this voice that I'm exploring on the instrument and through music.
Tom and I call them kickflips, where it's just a bunch of gratuitous kickflips all over the place. Whether you just listen to a record and you're like, that mix engineer was really trying to insert his thing, a bunch of like kickflip stuff all over. Yeah. So, and I think a lot of people, regardless of the genre, you can experience that when you're like, I don't know if he needed to really put that in there. But yeah, but you are a talented player. So that push and pull is kind of always there. But I love, and what I think a lot of people should know about you, as we go on and you continue to talk about this record specifically, where you do stretch a little bit in the lead capacity, is you are someone that a lot of your fans definitely know as someone that has a rhythmic touch with the instrument that I think is often not understood and not given as much weight. I always find that where it's a lot harder. It's like when drummers are playing, early on, and it's just like, hey, if you can actually learn how to make a beat groove to a click, you realize very quickly you're going to make the band and the people you're playing with sound that much better, regardless of the flash, So yes, I think that's a really important thing, especially for the brand that you've curated, for people to know if they weren't already.
Yeah, and this album, because of all that stuff, I love collaborating. Being able to, create a painting with another artist is kind of a fun thing for me, where it's like, I will paint the setting, I will paint the background, and I'll even make the frame that the painting sits in, but allow the collaborator to be the main focus. It's like you have Mona Lisa, but she's in a room, and then there's a window, and there's the stuff in the back, and then the frame, and there's, all this stuff that is very important. It's not just about the main subject. It's all this other stuff around it. So I also, as a producer, that's a big thing that I bring to the table: a producer, arranger, writer. So, some people are like, oh, what is, I'll even put out songs where it's like not a ton of guitar stuff on it. People are like, well, what's this? Like, Cory's like doing nothing on this. It's like, well, I wrote it and produced it and mixed it, and like I put the entire thing together, so those are things that I bring to the table, that I showcase on my albums, and that I'm excited about showcasing, because there are things to me that, as far as what I bring to the table, are just as compelling as the guitar playing. It's really fun on this album to be able to collaborate with a lot of my friends and people that I've just really admired as artists, and explore a different space on my instrument, and writing wise. It's been a really fun thing.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I love the content. I love that metaphor of the painting. And I think a lot of what you're touching on, both as an instrumentalist and as a producer, is about creating a depth in the art, that it's not just like a very like one-dimensional thing where it's like, here, just pay attention to this, that there are layers and they all work together in a really cohesive way. And I think what you're talking about, which I love, which is what so much of your music, and even like the first track here on the record, it kind of hit me with, it's like so much about this groove that is infectiously just builds. And then by the time you get to the end of it, you're realizing more and more nuances about what make it as strong and infectious as it is. And I love that so much. And it's really about exercising a discipline as well, which I think any great, I'm sure you would probably agree, any great rhythm player, regardless of what instrument, that's kind of where it is. It's knowing the role and defining that and doing things that make everything else happening around it even stronger and give it something to play off of.
Totally.
So with that, let's start with track one here, which if the track list I'm looking at is correct and the one that'll go out, is a song called "Look at Me."
Yes, this is the one that I did featuring Alan Stone. And this actually started as an idea. My friend Cody Fry sent me a handful of these little like 10, 15 second nuggets of ideas. And he was just like, I don't think these fit my album. And he and I write together all the time. We're really close friends. And he just said, are you hearing something on this? You want this? You want to do something with this? I was like, yep, I know exactly what to do with that. So he sent me that idea, and then I took it and I ran with it, and I started messing around with some melodic ideas, some lyric ideas, building some rhythm section ideas, and actually recorded a lot of like a really good sounding demo of it, sent it to Alan Stone, and he just said, yes, I know what to do with this. And he like 2 weeks later just sent me tracks that were done. He was like, this is it. I got it. I was like, I love it. There's one little thing I want to change. Let's do this. And he said, oh, yep, totally. I was wondering a little bit. There's this option, boom, boom, boom. And then I kind of mix and matched a few of the things that he sent. And, it's like one of those things for a lot of us that do remote recording when we're not in the studio. It's like you'll do a bunch of things and just say like, hey, use as much or as little of this as you want. Totally cool. It's ideas. And it was fun to have his, like he gave me a bunch of stuff to work with that was all tied into the lead vocal and layers around it. And to be able to really kind of utilize, smaller and bigger stuff, having a dynamic arc with the vocal production and with the band production was really great. Added horns on it. I just added more stuff, but it really felt like something that was very much like an Alan Stone, Cory Wong, Cody Fry writing thing. Like Cody and I have a writing thing together that we've done a bunch. Alan has his thing. And I think you hear a lot of the three of us in the writing of it, and the way that I produced it really just kind of feels like, straight down the middle of what I do.
Yeah.
That felt good.
That's unbelievable. So you mentioned working as writing partners. How did the connection with Alan Stone then come about? Because there's an extension of trust in all of these ways. Sure, things can get passed around, and I'm not really sure what this is. Is it something for you? How'd that come about too? Because I think it's always interesting. From a vocal standpoint, I've talked with, a number of really renowned instrumentalists, right? But then also it's like bringing in certain features, whether it's an instrumental feature or then a vocal feature, is also sometimes like a tough decision that has to really feel right, and especially to have it be the opening track of the record. How did you know Alan, and how did that connection come about?
Well, it's the opening track of the album because it turned out to be a banger. That's
right. Simple as that.
You want to put your bangers up top.
Yep.
I mean, and I feel great about everything on there. It was the track list was actually really hard to make for me on this one. But as far as Alan, I've been familiar with his music for a long time. We have a bunch of mutual friends. We have talked about working together in a bunch of different settings. I know what he's capable of. He's one of the baddest singers in the world. Incredible. And I'm familiar with his artistry. I know what he brings to the table writing-wise. I know his vibe. And I knew, I had a bunch of tunes that I was thinking like, oh, which one would be right for Alan? I sent him a couple options, and he was just like, this is the one. I was like, I thought that you would pick that one. And it was just one of those things where I knew I could trust it because I'm familiar with his artistry. Everybody that I've collabed with on this album, I'm very familiar with their work, whether they be friends of mine or not. I've listened to pretty much their entire catalog, and I'm very familiar with their artistry. So that's where it's just like, I know that I can trust because I'm familiar with what they do, and I trust my own skill set and communication as a producer to be able to communicate what it is I'm looking for as a writing partner, to say, here's my vision for this, to know when to let somebody take something and run with it, and to know when to say, all right, yeah, that's great, but let's turn a little bit this way, and then that sort of thing. So
to subtly guide that ship, which it really is an art, and it's a skill set in its own that not every like really talented player has necessarily in their arsenal. That's unbelievable. What a great case study for that. And yes, you're right. It turned out as a great opening track that pulls you right in. I know this because I just listened to it again right before we hopped on. So then you talked about the track list being pretty difficult to make for a number of reasons. But when you have so many different ideas and filtering them down, let's talk about another incredible feature that comes right after that. And this one, I was really interested to see where this came into play and how it worked. All the pieces work together and fit together. Track 2 is a song called Hiding on the Moon. And I'll let you talk about the feature on that one.
Yeah, so this one features OAR. And OAR is a band that I've been a fan of for a long time, since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I used to listen to OAR and just be like, dang, these are the cats. These are part of the scene. Like
right.
It was like, I remember just like thinking, just being stoked about good songs, good musicianship. And over the years, they've kind of towed this line between like, hey, we're going to make an album where we're going to make a radio hit. And then we're going to make an album that's more like musician forward sort of thing. And then we're going to make an album that has a radio hit. And then we're going to do something that's for the deep fans. And I've had a lot of respect for a band like that who's been able to toe that line and to have that as part of their artistry. And Mark, the lead singer of OAR, and I have become friends. And we were just talking about, hey, we should do something together. We're just messaging each other online, and kind of became friends over Instagram. And then, it started to blossom into more. And
as you do. Yep.
Yeah. As a mutual respect of each other's artistry and stuff. And he was a fan of my music. I had known the OAR music for a long time. And oddly enough, like the first song, this started with like a 4-bar loop that Cody Fry sent me. And he was just like, dude, there was one day that we were sitting around just listening to music. And I was like, man, Moby. Dude, Moby is dope. And there's that song Porcelain.
Yep.
Has this sort of like swelling, this 4-chord loop that just kind of like swells, and it's got this very emotional thing to it. And Cody was like, yo, I made this thing it's kind of got a porcelain feel to it. And it was like kind of the chorus chord progression and like kind of vibe. And you hear it on the song. It's got this string section that kind of blossoms, and but it's got like, a couple interesting chords in there and some interesting notes in there that kind of perk the ear a little bit. It's like, yep, I know what to do with this one too. And then I kind of built the song around it, built a song form, had a bunch of melodic ideas. And it was one of like 5 ideas I sent to Mark from OAR. And because we were, just messaging on Instagram. So I just DM'd him like, hey, here's a link to like 4 different things. Are any of these grabbing you? I'm working on a record. Like, do any of these interest you? He's like, yeah, they all do. But this one, I've got the chorus for. I was like, all right, that's it. Let's go. So he sent me a voice memo back of him singing along to my loop, or to my demo that included the loop. And I was just like, yep, that's it. How do we do this? He goes, give me a couple weeks, come to New York City. Let's do it at my studio. So I was like, all right, yeah, great. He's like, yeah, I've got this space. I'm sharing it with the Goo Goo Dolls right now. Just come in to this spot in Manhattan, meet me there, whatever, on this week, because he knew I was going to be there. I said, all right, went up to the studio. He and I finished writing that song that day. We just sat there, old school, just pen and a paper, thinking about ideas of like what it is to find like kind of a safe haven, whether it be in your mind or something physical, but also something kind of like cosmic feeling. That's something that feels like it's, physical and just like in the mind. We came up with this tune. We wrote it, the verses and the chorus and everything. And then I took it home and then just kind of finished producing it, recorded all the instruments, because we recorded over the demo. So then I replaced all the musical elements when I got home, came up with some guitar hooks for it. And, honestly, I thought of opening the album with this, but I didn't feel like my fans that are Cory Wong fans, this might be a little too jarring to be the opening song for my record. So Look at Me is more down the middle Cory Wong.
Yeah. Last season, we talked a lot about balancing kind of expectations, both of yourself, as a performer, as an artist, but then also like, kind of using and or sometimes subverting your own fan, your existing audience's expectations of what. So that I love that too, because that's such a great example of you kind of having the pulse of knowing what people, are going to expect and being able to curate things in a certain way for a really good experience, but that also allows them, we talk about, every band does, every label, does, what order do we roll these out in, strategically, do we want to just go shock and all right out of the gate, or do we want to do the opposite? So I think that's interesting. And it works nicely in that second position there for exactly that reason.
And then the next song, Call Me Wild, is another one that feels more Cory Wong-ish. It's kind of more like that funky, bubbly pop funk sort of thing. And this one, my friend Dodie, she's from the UK, incredible artist. Oh my gosh, I am such a huge fan. She's one of my favorite singers and artists, and she's just such a cool person. We met over the internet and just like, we're loving each other's stuff because she found a couple of my songs. It was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And then she made a cover of a Wolfpack song and just did a really cool arrangement of it. And then I've just been a big fan of her music. So we talked a bunch about working together. Finally, again, similar to the other guys, like I sent her a few examples of, here's some stuff I'm working on. Are you hearing anything over these? And she literally sent me back a vocal that was just like, it was it. It was done. She did her demo. Like, she just like, oh yeah, here's what I'm hearing on this song. It's like a fun party song. Cause I had given her a little bit of a prompt of what I was looking for on the tune. So we met up in LA. We were like recording at this Airbnb that I sometimes stay at, where I can set up like a bunch of gear, and it's a spot where I can set up gear and like make noise. And it's like ideal for it. Really cool spot, good view. It's like an inspiring place to stay. So she came and met me there. We sat down to look at the song. She sent me her stems that she did at home. I opened it up in the studio there at the house, and it was like, I don't know that we're going to beat this today. Like, I think you nailed it. She's like, yeah, I was coming in kind of thinking the same thing, because we've set up a mic. We're trying to, do the thing. And she's got a really intimate tone. It's very close mic'd. So, she's got a unique sound and a unique delivery. So what we ended up doing is we just used her demo vocal for the whole thing. But what we did is we did a bunch of layers. So the main vocal is her demo vocal. And then we did a bunch of layers kind of tucked underneath, some whisper tracks, some doubled tracks. And then her and I added some other vocals that were kind of vibe. And we added some other instruments just to kind of add some extra fun things. And then I took it and ran with it. That's when actually that I had programmed drums. I programmed the drums on it. And the whole time I was like, man, I love these drums. It kind of has this interesting vibe that I haven't really done before, but I wonder if I need to add real drums. And I did a mix, and I sent her the mix, and she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good this mix sounds. I can't believe how great you have my vocal sound. It's so upfront. It's so in your face and intimate. I was like, yes, I know, because I've listened to your music. I know how your vocal should sound.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's like, a lot of people, they mix my vocal and they just don't know what it should do. So they put it in this weird space. I was like, no. I know exactly where your vocal should sit. Your voice should literally be in, like, it should be an ASMR thing. And her mouth should be at your ear, basically, that close, like in the AirPod. And then I was like, are you happy with this? Are you good? Because I want to make sure you feel 100%. She's like, I think we should try adding real drums just to see. And if we like the program drums better, fine. So I sent the track to Aaron Sterling. He literally in 6 hours just sent me back new drums, all these different like percussion layers too that were really interesting and cool. I just told him, like, give me some weird Talking Heads, Tom Tom Club stuff, just some interesting sounds and things. And he knew exactly what to do. And this is one of my favorite tracks in the album for sure.
Oh man. Did you do the final mixes on this, or that kind of, so
most of the album I think I did 8 of the 12 songs, and John Fields did the others.
Okay. I think that's so important and speaks volumes for that exact reason that you just described with Dodie, right? So because you had done your homework, you know what it's supposed to feel. And especially if we talk about vocals, it's one thing to be like, okay, here's how, like a cool funk, like groove centric, pocketed rhythm section groove should feel and should be balanced. Right. But it's another thing to be like, it's more than just the notes. It's more than just the songwriting. It's how does the feature get placed inside of a track that's on your album? And I love that, because you're paying homage, you're paying respect. And in many ways, I think nowadays a lot, we can go on and end up talking about like Grimes license, doing her, open source AI voice stuff, but we won't. But in that way, I think it's really interesting, is that's one of the things that you might lose that becomes part of, in the same way you're a guitar player. We'll talk a little bit about at the end, if we have time, like your signature strat and some of the other like, plugin collaborations that you do. They have that baked in, and that's for a vocalist. You don't always get to, that's a big part of it, right? Is choosing how and where you want to be placed within the context of a song. That's a lot of vocalists' signature, So I love that. And I think you'd only be able to get that because you were at the helm in this, that you weren't just like, hey, like, do a top line and then send it off to someone and be like, I don't know, it's a female vocal top line here. This is where it should go.
That's not it.
I love that, man. That's so great. I'll put my all D's on and really crank it the next time around I listen and really get into it. So let's keep going, because we're actually doing a pretty good job. I think we might get through all the songs here.
Yeah, the next one is called The Grid Generation. This one is one I was looking for. So with my live show, I'm always trying to think of what's a good opening song, what's a good closing song, what are some live bangers, and I was searching for something that would be a great like kind of be a replacement as a new show opener.
Oh, okay.
And keyboard player in my band, Kevin, I emailed him and was just like, yo, we need a new show opener. What do you think? And he sent me a couple demos and a couple things. And this one, I was just like, yeah, that's the one. There was a couple parts in it where I was like, oh, I think this maybe sounds a little too Snarky Puppy-y for me, which I love Snarky Puppy.
Yeah.
But it was just like, there's a couple things that didn't sound very Cory Wong.
Yeah.
So I just like needed to pull them into being more of my own thing, feeling rather than sounding like somebody else or something. Of course, right? So changed a handful of things in there, came up with some other melody things, did some writing. And then as I was making the demo for it, I just found myself programming drums. I'm like, dude, I am just programming Lewis Cole right here. This is all I'm doing. Let me just call Lewis and send him this track and have him play on it. So I texted Lewis. I was like, hey, I got this song for my record. I'm basically sitting here typing you in on my MIDI keyboard. Like, will you just do this? Will you play on this? He's like, yes, absolutely. I love it. And he just came in and destroyed it.
Oh,
so that's
so cool. Is that where the title came from then?
Oh yeah. He and I always talk about like, we're a grid generation. You know, he and I are grid players. We're this like aggressive, every 16th note accounted for sort of driving players. And he's just such a singular voice on the instrument. So I knew I had to have him on that one.
I love that. So so rock solid. I linked to stuff that he's done too. I love the idea, and this is actually really interesting for anybody listening that is, that I'm sure it's a lot of people programming drums, whether it be for just the purpose of demos or trying to make a whole like bedroom record production, right? One of the things that's interesting, and especially working with like full bands, especially in like the rock genre or funk or very like rhythm section, real drum based stuff, trying to emulate that is one of the biggest dead giveaways. And what I always try to tell a lot of the bands that I work with or that are working on a budget is consult your drummer before you go program. You think about what your drummers actually has that's really valuable and unique stylistically. And it's if you can imprint their like choice and their instinct in any way, even down to don't program something that your drummer either can't play or would never stylistically play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then you're just sounding like you might as well just pull in some rock band loops, So I love, this is the literal embodiment of being like, I should go get the person that I'm channeling right now from a stylistic, right? So, and you were able to do that. Of course, not everybody can do that, but that's the mindset that I think is super valuable and probably made that track exactly what it was, So I love that so much, man. If you're listening to this show, I'm guessing there's a good chance that you're the type of person that appreciates the time and effort that goes into something meaningful, something lasting, and something that tells the world exactly who you are. Well, Brett and Dave, the co-founders of our sponsor, Oxford Pennant, share that very same appreciation. They've made it easier than ever to elevate any space in your life and express your style with their meticulously crafted American-made pennants. From classic designs to customized creations, each piece is a work of art. It's quality you can feel and a statement that truly lasts a lifetime. I recently had the pleasure of touring their Buffalo-based shop where they tirelessly make each piece by hand. And honestly, their process really is an inspiring fusion of passion and precision. So go make your mark, celebrate your story, and discover the epitome of timeless craftsmanship and personalized expression by visiting oxfordpennant.com today. Track 5. It's turning into a lightning round now. I love it.
Here we go.
Yeah. Talk to me about track 5.
Separato. This is just one that I had this melody in my head one day. And actually, a lot of times I start most of my writing from a rhythm section standpoint, just because I'm such a junkie about rhythm sections. But this one, straight up melody I heard in my head, started jamming it one day, and then, just would use it as something where it's like, oh, we need a little time, something to jam on at a live show. Started using it as just a vehicle to kind of feel good and have a thing. And then eventually actually wrote a song out of it and pull it up here. So this is one that I've been doing live for a little bit, but really just wanted kind of like a definitive studio version of.
Oh, I love that. I think honestly, some of those, the ones, I think it's often really interesting, and I feel like you don't always know or can't always put your finger on it, but some tracks, especially on an album, they just are like, this feels like like it's the band, you know what I mean? This feels like it's live. Yeah. And I feel like, when bands, it's rare, but like in an era, it used to be very common where pre-internet, you'd be like, this is a new song. We're just going to play it because nobody's going to record it on their phone and leak it and all, you know what I mean? Like, and so I feel like you see less of bands being willing to go out there with like works in progress and workshop it. But in this genre, I love that, dude. I love it so much. And so Separato is kind of a product of that. Yeah. Brilliant. How about Acceptance?
Acceptance is one where I often like to have kind of not guitar hero ballads, but like guitar, like heartfelt melody things where it's like I can really deliver a melody on my instrument.
Yeah.
I have a couple other tunes kind of in this vein, Meditation and Home. And I wanted something else that kind of feels deep, like I can really channel something. And this tune is one of those where it's like this kind of a guitar opera, you know, big kind of orchestrated, you know, big string section, woodwind section, kind of orchestra added on to this thing. And got great strings and bunch of string players and winds players, all, you know, brass players. And this one's just like a guitar anthem, I guess, is kind of.
Yeah, guitar. You had me at guitar opera or
yes.
guitar orchestra. Really showcasing, I think, probably your arranging chops there, sewing that all together. Right. It's not always a lot of people. I tend to find myself leaning back toward, especially when you put really lush string arrangements or you're trying to be like, what else could it need? It can be really tough, and you can find yourself in the scenario of like, am I trying to put 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag? To be crass about it. But yeah, it's like it takes a really, really deep layer of thought to do it well and cohesively and have that wall of sound kind of thing and have that robustness without stepping on toes and have it make sense and have it, have maintain clarity. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's where I did bring in somebody. I mean, I produced it, but as far as the arranging, I worked with a friend of mine who does most of my horn arrangements, Michael Nelson, who's just a brilliant arranger. So I needed a second opinion. I knew that I couldn't do it all myself and trust myself that I'd make as objective of decisions as I could. So that's why it was nice to have him. And then, he has me to lean on as a producer to say like, oh, let's lean it this way. Let's lean it that way. And that one took a long time to get right. I did a lot of working on that one to get it really feeling right because it is so delicate, which is actually the opposite of the next track, Ready. This one is one that came together in no time. This one is insane because this one features my friend Ben Rector, who I used to tour with all the time. So this one, my friend, to bring up Aaron Sterling again, fabulous drummer, he texted me one day and was just like, hey, dude, I have a mono loops pack coming out next week, doing some promo, whatever. Like, would you be down to like record something over one of my loops? I'll send you the pack and all the samples and whatever,
Yeah.
So like, yeah, dude, sick. So I found a sample or like a loop. I don't know. Yeah, just this loop that felt really good. And I made this 8-bar pattern, like a rhythm section thing. And then I had this guitar lead line over it. And I posted it on Instagram. And my friend Ben Rector then texted me 15 minutes after I posted this. And he goes, yo, what are your plans with that? Was that just like a post or do you have like a song for that?
Yeah.
I was like, honestly, dude, I just posted it because Aaron was asking. I was like, and I felt inspired. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it.
Yeah.
Is it good? Is it any good? He's like, yes, absolutely. It's good. And I have the chorus for it. Send me the stems. I was like, all right, great. I sent him the stems. He sings the chorus over it, sends it back to me. And he's like, and here's my 2 verse ideas. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, yep, that's it. Verse 2 feels a little disconnected. And I was like, let me rewrite the music under the verse that will still work with your melody and your lyrics. So I rewrote some of the stuff for the verses and then kind of reworked some of the form and then sent it back to him later that day. And then the next day he's like, we could do better on these lyrics. I'm going to give you 5 options for the first 2 lines of verse 2. So he sent these over. I'm like, I know what we're doing here, but it still doesn't feel right. What about this? What about this? And then the next day he's like, here's 3 more options. And then by the time I opened up the email, he's like, never mind, use option 2. Don't even listen to option 1 or 3. It's done.
Yeah.
And I put in his vocals. I recorded the bass. I recorded the guitars that day. And then I sent it to Sterling. I was like, yo, I'm using your loop on this, but I do feel it feels amazing. Like I want some things to like give some fence posts around the sections, but I don't want to lose the feeling of the loop. Can you do that? Can you record it? He's like, yep, I know exactly what to do. So he pretty much played his loop, but he just did it throughout the song. So it had more human feeling to it, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Which is cool. So that one came together in a few days.
Yeah. Wow. You're just like, hey, I know that I have like the perfect version of you playing exactly this, but this is actually really interesting, and where it's like, especially in like, you know, kind of the modular like grid compositional era that we live in, right? Like, you know, the DAW being kind of like the desktop, you know, cutting room. It's interesting that I think that's a way that songwriters can keep a song feeling unique and not have a loop be tired, right?
Yes.
Is by making these subtle different characteristics in the same way an arranger would be like, okay, that through line is going to continue here rhythmically, but in a different section, right? It's like, you know, he can do that and it might just float a little bit more organically to the rest of the performances and makes it feel real. Yeah.
Just play the loop the whole time.
Right.
Literally just play it. It's like a mantra. Like every time you say the mantra, it's going to be a little different.
Right.
But it's still the same thing.
Yeah. And because the player themselves is going through that journey and is, you know, evolving with the loop and everything around it, they'll start to hear things differently as they kind of progress through it and respond differently and feel like, so that the last time they play that loop will be different than the first time they play that loop, even if just a little bit, right? You know, because they themselves have experienced that passing of time and the journey of all the elements around them. I'm a firm believer in that. So I love that is how that all happened and came together. That's very interesting. So talk to me about, then you have another feature on the next track after that, Ain't Life Strange. Talk to me about this track 8.
Yeah, this one features Aeril Posen, who's one of the greatest guitar players of our time. Incredible slide player and incredible singer, just a total triple threat guitar, vocal, songwriter, incredible musician. And he and we've actually never written in person together, but we've written a ton remotely. And we send stuff back and forth to each other all the time. And I was working on this album and I was like, dude, I got like 2 songs left to write for this album. I don't know if I want to do something instrumental. Don't know if I want to do another vocal. I don't really care. I just want something that captures this certain energy. I'm looking for something that has a little bit of a meditative quality to it, something a little bit reflective, something a little more chill. Here's 2 demos. There was one where it's like this ukulele song that I wrote, which didn't end up on the album. It's still just sitting on my hard drive here somewhere. And then this tune. And then also I was like, yeah, but also we could just write something from scratch together if you want. And he sent back literally the same day, like others. He's like, I hear the chorus. I know it. He's like, I hear it. I know what to do with this. And, you know, this is not every album or every day that this happens. You know, It's like it just happened to be a few of these tunes. So he sent me, I was like, this is not what I was hearing over this song, but it's really good. And I love it.
Yeah.
And so I sat with it for a day. I was like, man, I was hearing the melody start here. I was hearing this. And then I just said, screw that. What am I doing? Like, I need to get rid of how I was thinking about this tune. And now I'm going to come at it with fresh ears. So I forgot about it. I was like, I'm not going to listen to it for a couple of days. I came back to it. It's like, this is exactly it. If we're going to do this as a vocal song, this is a perfect way to do it. Because I actually had been hearing it as an instrumental tune up until I sent it to him. I thought we were going to do an instrumental tune, and he sent back a song. I was like, all right, you nailed it. Let's tweak this. Let's add this weird chord change here. Let's do this thing here. Let's change this bass note to make it this. And then kind of produced around it from there, because it also had like this weird drum loop that made it feel kind of stale. And I think that's maybe what some of those like demo elements were throwing me off on the song side of it. So he's like, dude, just trust me. I know this is going to kill. Like, let's work this out. And I do trust him. And he was absolutely right. And ended up being just really, really fun. And he plays slide guitar in a way that I'll never be able to play. So it's nice to have a slide guitar solo on there to feature him, because I'm not going to play a slide solo on my album. Not at this point, because I haven't put in the reps. I don't play it in tune enough.
Yeah, man, I love that. And it's, again, it goes back to a touch, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you could sit there and you could probably like, you know, dial it in, like put the hours in the woodshed shedding, and it still wouldn't have that same touch, in the same way that, like, from a rhythm standpoint, if he's, you know, playing the parts that you're sitting there writing, it's going to feel a little different. They're going to be of incredible quality and performance, but it'll be a little, it's not the world. So I love knowing the role and then being willing to just take the leap and be like, nah, we're going in a different direction because it's better. It's, you know, and it's something so night and day to where you saw the original vision. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So how about track 10 or track 9 rather, Flamingo?
Yeah. This is one. I've been a huge fan of brass tracks for a while. I mean, I'm a horn section guy. I love horn sections, but brass tracks, this is interesting because it's a bunch of layered trumpets and a lot of trumpets that are pitched down, like in octaves or other things. And he's got a really cool way of layering horns that has a sound.
Yeah.
He's got a real sound as far as a horn player and an arranger. So this is another one where we were just friends over the internet. And we were just like, we should work on something together sometime. And on that same trip that I was working with OAR, I had an extra day off. And I hit up Ivan from Brass Tracks. And I was like, hey, dude, I'm in New York City. You around? He's like, yeah, man, I'm around kind of the next few nights. What do you got going on? I was like, I'm in town. I got a few songs I'm working on. You want to get together? Went over to his apartment or his flat or whatever. And we just banged out this tune that night. We just nailed it. He tracks his stuff so fast. It's just like, all right, here. All right, boom, boom, boom. Next layer. Boom, 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 boom. Next layer. All right, here's the harmony. Here's the harmony. He's so accurate and so good. He's got such a sound, and he knows exactly how to use his rig. And this is one where during the trumpet tracking, I was just standing by watching. He's engineering his own stuff. Like, oh yeah, try this and try blah, 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 try this. And he just incredible artistry, and this is a fun one to put together.
Oh man, wow. You know, and it's that kind of where the production and the template and knowing exactly how to do it becomes a whole instrument more than just, you know what I mean? Like it's I love that so much about this, and especially with such an interesting instrument and that characteristic you know, of bringing brass tone in not like the conventional, you know, kind of like horn section way necessarily, I think is really interesting, in the same way that, you know, I'm sure over the years, you know, we all experiment different pedals. Like, okay, instead of a synth, what if I layer this, you know, line with like a pitch shift kind of thing a couple times, and then give it some grit, give it some hair, and it sounds like a synth, actually a guitar. So it's neither, you know, and or layering two instruments to make a third new sound otherwise, you know, that has its own identity. And I love that. What a cool example of that. And what a great way to use it. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. That song and this next one, Anonymous, these are ones I wanted to change up, kind of experiment with the way that the horn section sounds. Because what I've had with my horn section typically is very much horn section sound.
Yeah.
It's very kind of like the proper horn section thing, which I love. And that's my home base. But that one, I wanted to try the layered trumpet things. With this tune, Anonymous, I wanted to try stuff that's more saxophone layers and then build some more horns around it. So this is one where Cody Fry and I were writing this instrumental tune together, kind of working on it. He had some ideas, sent it to me. I added some stuff on top of it. And then I was on the road, and one of the guys who was playing sax with me, Sam Greenfield, he and I were messing around with this tune, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm hearing this sort of thing. And I said I was looking for kind of like a big band bebop sort of line in this section, but layered saxophones. He's like, dude, I know exactly what to do. So we put all this together, and then I kind of arranged all this stuff around that. I had it going for a while, and then I was like, I need something in the middle to kind of make it feel like it goes into overdrive for a second. So I was, a few months ago, I was in New York City, and at Sear Sound Studios, I had James Francis come play piano, and he just plays this blistering piano solo on this song that just kind of like does this stuff that, like, you know, it's like, whoa, this kind of takes a new direction. Because I did have like a really chill piano solo on there that kind of matched the vibe of the tune, but I wanted something that was going to be like a little bit of a twist that you wouldn't see coming. But he just destroyed. He's one of the most insane keyboard players I've ever seen.
Oh, wow. It was probably fun to watch go
Yeah.
down and take it there to that different place. Wow, unbelievable. Well, where the finish line is in sight here. And I haven't even listened to the album, and I already feel like I've been on a journey. Take us home, the penultimate track, Brooklyn Bop. What do we got? Where did it come from?
This one, actually, I was in a hotel room in Williamsburg a couple years ago, about to do this like Cory, Wong and Friends show, where I just like put a bunch of friends together, and we did a pop-up show at a club in Brooklyn. I just like hadn't been playing gigs because of the thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to just throw a show together, just pop-up show at a smaller club. So I was like, hey, next week I'm doing this show. Things sold out immediately. It's like, frick yeah. I'll get a bunch of my friends together, and I'm trying to figure out like, we can do some of my songs, but I also just want to explore, play new stuff, just find some new space. I sit in my hotel room. So the day before the gig, we did this little rehearsal at a spot in Brooklyn. I'm sitting in the hotel room, just kind of jamming on something. I'm like, ooh, this is cool. I made a little voice memo. It's like, I think we can do some of this. I sent it to the drummer, sent it to some of the guys, like, hey, let's mess with this at soundcheck. And then we just kind of wrote the song at soundcheck and played it that night for the first time. And then it's just evolved into this tune that we've played a bunch live. And it's just a really fun song to play. And again, now I just kind of like needed a definitive album version of the song.
Yeah. Do you think at all, are there any ways where in real time, like audience reaction as you've played this live a bunch, or places that it's gone, helped it evolve into the studio version? Anything specific?
Absolutely. I've tried messing with the form a bunch of times. It's like, let's go A, B, solo over the A, solo over the B, pass the next solo. You know, we tried the kind of jazz method where it was kind of
everybody round the horn, back to the head. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just kind of didn't feel right. And we've tried different feel changes. We've tried different breakdowns, different sort of things. This song I recorded with 2 solos up until the day before I sent it to mastering. I finally was like, I don't think it needs 2 solos. It's too long. So I took out, sorry, James. He played an incredible piano solo on this one too, but it was just like, I don't think this recording needs it. So I shortened it, and now it's just 1 guitar solo in there. I kind of do like my George Benson-y style solo. And it's a horn melody, guitar solo, and then back to the melody out. Like it just felt like it needed to be more concise for the studio version. But live, we stretch on it, and we go into different places. So it's cool.
Dude, what an awesome exercise in discipline and making the choices for a fixed version, knowing that you're like, hey, we can do whatever the hell we want with it still, and it can live and breathe in an organic world, which I think is definitely much more common, I think, in like the instrumental and more jam-based spaces for sure. Obviously jazz and a lot of, the freeform stuff. But nowadays in rock, it's like great bands will do that and figure and take sections of parts and see their songs as building blocks to a live set and still be willing to mold them. And I think those are the ones that make the best show. It doesn't have to just be start, finish, right? And so I what a great example of how you kind of settled on the version here. But a lot of your fans will probably be like, oh, I can't wait. I know he's going to just completely tear that one apart if they play it live,
Yeah, totally.
It's very exciting. So we've arrived at the closer, which is a track called Ace.
Yes, and this one I think is going to maybe be the biggest this one will be the biggest curveball for my fans, because it's much more of like a modern sounding production track, almost EDM-y. But it's because I collaborated with my friends Big Gigantic, who's a great band. I love them. I love what they do. It's this duo that's drums and then sax and keys and kind of DJ, computer, all this stuff is the other cat. And it's just a really cool, interesting blend of electronic stuff with live instruments all being played live, which is super cool. Those guys have become good friends of mine, and we've talked for a lot of years about doing stuff together. And I had this track that was like, man, this is kind of a dancey thing. My friend Seth Tackerberry from the UK sent me a handful of writing ideas, and I was like, oh yeah. It was just like the kind of the chorus groove thing. So I was like, okay, I think I can write like a cool guitar melody over this, come up with a couple other sections, and then kind of build it out and have my friends big gigantic kind of help close this thing out.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to kind of get into there, because I'm not like EDM producer guy, and that's kind of not my world. But it was fun to dive into that sort of production with somebody where, it's all music, and it's all, I mean, we're talking about the same 12 notes.
Right.
We're talking about all the same rhythms. It's just using a different set of tools to get to the end product, and different sounds to get there. So it was really fun kind of collaborating and figuring out different sounds and methods to get to the end, and feeling really great about, having something that sounds very much like me and very much like them. It's just it's a cool thing. That's what I love about collaboration, because I don't know that they would have ever done this sort of thing, and I wouldn't have ever done this sort of thing on our own. We needed each other in order to do this thing.
Yeah, well, I love that, and I love that both of you were willing to take that leap, towards the other and come together. I think it's interesting and kind of fitting. We talked about, we talked about earlier on the album, having that kind of like grid generation, ideology and kind of inside joke there. And this is kind of you meeting a very grid centric ones and zeros kind of tool set with the organic player and that kind of like right hand finesse, spirit to it. So that is a cool way of like ending the album on an interesting forward thinking note, which I think also evolving, at least in some way, your audience, people will have their favorites. And I think that's the wonderful thing about making full albums and records, is it allows you to take those chances, and I love that so much. And on that note, talking about tools, before we go, I would love to hear your thoughts on like the prime tools that you could not do what you do without. There are some obvious answers here, but I want to give you the space to share some of the tools that you are also making available for other people, for other players, other producers, because I think they're really interesting. So what do you have?
Yeah, for me, when it comes to tools, it's what is going to get you your end result that you're looking for in the most frictionless, effortless way possible. And for me, I have had the fortune of designing and working on tools with many of the best companies in the world. So when it comes to, guitar tone, there's the Cory Wong signature Stratocaster that I developed with Fender. And it's based on one of their higher end models with an homage to this other one that I had, but it's very much like working man's guitar, or working person's guitar. Like it's great for clean tones, but we designed the pickups in a way where it handles drive. It drives really well. It's got a bunch of modern features to make it more comfortable and playable, really fast neck. And then, with my sound, compression is a huge thing. So the Wong compressor I developed with Wampler pedals. It's a compressor boost and DI all in one.
Ooh, nice. I had the Ego compressor on my board for a while years ago.
Yeah. Great compressor.
Where did that go? I'm digging that back.
The Wong compressor, it was originally based off the Ego compressor circuit, and then we tweaked and kind of put it on steroids a little bit, give your tone some more punch and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I used the Optimist overdrive that I developed with Jackson Audio, which is a 2-channel overdrive and an EQ, kind of really maximizing the amount of things that you can do in one pedal size format, which is great. And then as far as recording guitar tone, what I use for everything I record now is the Archetype Cory Wong plugin that I developed with Neural DSP.
Yeah.
They are the best in the game as far as amp modeling and just guitar tones on computers in general. I've had so many producers and guitar players tell me like it's the best plugin for clean tone. And part of it is that I was very relentless in making sure that it was right if my name was going to be on it with Neural DSP. Like they were like that. Like I said, they're the best in the game. And there was about 5 or 6 times where they're like, "We nailed it, it's done." And I was like, "No, we're not done." Like you're right. When I listen back, it sounds amazing. It sounds perfect. But when I'm playing it, it doesn't feel right. I don't know how to describe it.
That feel.
Yes. So then it was like, the sound is there, but we have to get the feel right when I'm playing it. So then eventually we just did more and more iterations. And all of a sudden they sent me one. It was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And they said, we're not happy that it took this long, but you're absolutely right. We are totally thrilled that it took this long, but we're not happy. Like, they were like simultaneously like, man, we didn't want to think that you were right on this one. And we're kind of bummed that we thought we nailed it, but we're so happy that we had you to make sure that we had it to this finish line. And, this is what they do. This is why they team up with some of the best players in the world to make sure that they care this much. They want to make sure they're getting it right. And although something can be algorithmically perfect, it also needs to work for the human. And they have just completely nailed it. And the Archetype Cory Wong plugin is, I will swear by it. As soon as I can start using it live without a computer, it will be all I use for my guitar tone.
I think that kind of care speaks volumes, especially in moving forward in the digital world. And there's a lot of debate nowadays, obviously, about, real amps, studio sounds. But I want to ask, because that you bring up such a great point, right? And some people, if you're not a guitar player, then bear with us because it's probably relevant to you in some way with whatever instrument you play or whatever your discipline is. How would you, if you had to, and you do because I'm asking you to graciously here, how would you explain what you meant when you said it doesn't feel right to someone maybe that is not a guitar player? Because that especially is, so I use, my band uses a bunch of Helix stuff for touring, similar, and we grapple with this and like adjusting sag and feeling, whatever. But how, like when you went back to them, you're like, sonically, yes, someone hears it, they'll be like, that's perfect. But the last like 2% was you playing through it and knowing it didn't feel right. And this to me is the biggest difference, is when you are using them in the studio, choices and the response of the player, especially for guitar, will be different based on the real time, like monitoring that they're getting, so to speak. But that monitoring isn't just sonic. It's also, there's a weird connect. How would you describe that as a person that kind of went to the ends of the earth to get it right?
If you're used to playing analog gear, it just responds in a certain way. It responds differently in how hard you attack it. It responds differently in how long you hold something. The transient. So when you first hit a note, it's the transient. That initial attack is the transient. And then everything after it is the sustain of it. Certain amps, the transient feels a certain way when you hit soft, and it feels a certain way when you hit harder. And it sometimes gets a little squishier when you hit it harder. And sometimes the way that transient folds into the note changes with how hard you hit and with how much force you're coming in. And a lot of the traditional modeling gear has just responded in a flat way. Whether I play soft, medium, or loud, it's all kind of the transient and the note. The transient feels the same throughout. The transition from the transient to the note feels the same, and then the note feels the same, as opposed to this one feeling like this one feeling like this one feeling like this. It's just like there's a feel to the way the amp responds and the way that it kind of like, you're like sometimes giving it a little bit much, in the same way where like if you like your car feels different when it's at 4,500 RPMs than when it's at 1,500 RPMs. Like the engine responds differently depending on where it's at in the gear.
That's perfect. So, I was gonna say, I was like, an engine, or like people know their cars because they drive them every day. So how, when it's not your car, when you get a rental or something, you're like, this feels completely different between this space and this space on the odometer. Wow, yeah, that's a good one.
Now imagine just feeling like you're really ramping up your speed, but it's just like always staying, the engine always feels like it's at this idling level.
Yeah.
It never feels like it really is amping up or ramping up. And a lot of the modeling gear has always just felt like it's this kind of idling.
Yeah.
It's like, it does sound like I am going faster. I am like, my car is doing the thing down the road, but it just doesn't feel like it's got the thing behind it. And I think that's where a lot of modeling gear has gone wrong. And that's where we had to nail it with the Archetype Cory Wong with Neural DSP. I would not let that thing go out with my name on it unless it felt like the car going all the way. I need all the gears.
Well, not only am I glad that you did put that extra time in, and glad that they had the patience with you.
Totally.
I'm glad that you gave such a thoughtful explanation of it, because I think kind of the whole, even what we talked about going through the whole record and everything, there's this kind of like human element that is baked into everything from, what happens with your right hand at the strings to all the way through the digital circuitry and signaling and your production on the other end. It's kind of like I was just sitting here like, balancing in like a string session, quartet session that I got back for a mix. And what you realize is when you put it in and the whole group balanced and they're great players, there's a depth and a swell that I could never in 100 years mirror with built-in automation if everything was just crushed. I was like, it has that human swell and an element and depth and character. And that's kind of, I think, what you arrive at and is always somewhere in all of your songs, whether it be the feel, the pocket, the other players you get on really great with, even if you're doing stuff remotely. So, Cory, this has been truly such a fun time and exploration. Thank you for sharing your gear candy with us. And we look forward to catching up with you soon. And obviously you can find out all about everything Cory Wong and all this stuff. We'll link to obviously the plugin sets and the signature model stuff. All very cool. You just came out with some new colors, I think, of the signature Strat. Very, very, very soothing, I'll say. I don't know which one. I think I'd go for the what is it? The kind of seafoamy one. I'm not sure. I forget what you call it. Surf green. Yeah, that's great. But thank you again. Have a wonderful show amongst the trees, and we'll talk to you soon. We haven't had a chance to do a lot of this track-by-track dissection on the show so far, but it really gave us a great opportunity to highlight a few cool things about Cory's process and about him as a musician. It showed us how he got pulled into new genres and compositional elements through the people that he worked with on these songs. There's a laundry list of featured artists and contributors that changed the focal point of the songs and allowed Cory to exercise new avenues in order to round out what best suited each individual song. There was no real formula, so every track was able to develop organically amongst the different stylistic approaches that each new voice brought into the mix. He talked about the importance of knowing your contributor's strengths and how he was allowed to be influenced by their previous works. The selflessness allows you to get the best out of everyone while challenging yourself to expand upon your own strengths based on what's required. I love the idea that Cory found himself playing more lead guitar on this album than any of his previous solo works, right? That's a unique stretch, especially for somebody that's already known the world over as an incredible guitar player. And you're going to see this theme come up a lot more in Season 6. The idea that as an artist or musician is shaping their work, that process is ultimately shaping them and who they will become. And I think it's that long-term mindset and that creative philosophy that helps us distance ourselves from the outcome of our work. So maybe keep that in mind if you're struggling in the weeds right now on something. And just know that wherever you land on the other side, you will be better for it, and we will be there waiting with another episode of
The Record Process.